Morning everybody, I'm Dave Yates. I'm going to take you through the first few slides of the presentation this morning, and I'll then hand over to Matt. So in terms of what we're looking for to do with you today, essentially we're going to talk you through who UKUPC are, what we do, why we do it and how we do it, the benefits of the route to market. Hopefully they'll speak for themselves. We'll also talk through what we do alongside yourselves prior to the framework being put forward, and then how we manage it subsequently. Most importantly, perhaps from your perspective, how the frameworks can work best for yourselves, and the support that we feel that we should be looking for from you to make sure that we're all getting something positive out of the experience. So, who is UKUPC? The board itself comprises of the heads of the UK Regional Purchasing Consortia. I won't go through them all, you're probably aware of most if not all of them, but that's also supplemented by the head of the Energy Council, or the Energy Consortium, and also the head of our catering operation, and that's TUCO. We also have several groups that help form the strategy and meld the common themes so that we do have a unified approach. And in total, we have 155 frameworks across the HE sector. Moving further on, the Joint Contracting Group, this provides the strategic overview and delivery of the national programme, and ensures that we've got the right framework agreements in place at the right time. This is supported by our communications group to make sure that our collaborative procurement ensures we are speaking to our key audience, and that we develop and work on a tailored message. And alongside them, we've got the Consortia Information Systems Strategy Group, who work together to improve the information systems used by us all. In terms of our common ways of working, it's important just to make sure that you guys realise that we are not for profit. We are owned by our members. The operational decisions are all undertaken by the heads of procurement at the institutions themselves. The governance of the boards largely comes from financial directors, and at all times we're acting solely on behalf of our members. So, NWUPC, who are we? We're non-profit making, limited by guarantee. We can trace our roots back to the 1970s, but the current form that you see us in today came around in August of 2000. Our primary sources of funding come from rebates through the frameworks themselves and the subscriptions that our members supply to us. We operate out of the northwest of the country, from as high in the country as Cumbria down to Worcester, also into North Wales and across the sea into Northern Ireland as well. We've got 24 full members, and they're bound by the Memorandum of Understanding and also Articles of Association. As we've already mentioned, the boards of directors are comprising of the FDs and also the heads of procurement. To supplement our full members, we also have associate members and affiliate members, and from there they don't get quite the same privileges as our full members, but can still take advantage of a number of our frameworks. So that's it from myself. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Matt, and thanks very much and have a great day, guys. Thank you.
Very much, Dave. Welcome everybody. I'm Matt Johnson. I'm the category manager for labs and professional services here at NEUPC. So Dave and I are opposite numbers on different sides of the hill. So from NEUPC's point of view, it's a very similar story to NW really. We were established in the year 2000. The board of directors are made up of the financial directors, estates and heads of procurement. Also not for profit, limited by guarantee, funded in exactly the same way by rebates and subscriptions. And our membership base, we have 23 full members, and then 4 associate members and 24 affiliate members. So the benefits of the frameworks themselves, they are a fully PCR 2015 compliant route to market. So they can overcome many of the conversations that could potentially happen around being a compliant route to market. They save time and money for both parties. It's one process that gets a lot of the generic elements of a requirement out of the way up front, so each of the institutions can then focus on their own local requirements, and the call-off process for this can be completed in days, whereas the full O2 process that would need to be done on a number of different occasions can take months at a time. So it's a saving in that respect. There's a single set of terms and conditions and model contract templates for the frameworks. There's no need to create them all from scratch each time or to negotiate each of the T's and C's. They're issued up front with the ITT that comes out with the tender opportunity. So you know up front the basis upon which we're expecting bids to be submitted. There's marketing assistance from the consortia to promote suppliers and the goods and services that they provide. So obviously making sure that gets through to the right audiences for you across the sector, and that is nationwide. There are bespoke mailing lists of relevant parties to make sure that it's reaching the right audience. So the information that you need to get in front of people is getting to the right person. And there's the support and guidance for institutions in accessing the frameworks from ourselves at the consortia. So if there are questions around how to utilise it, the documentation to use the process, anything of that kind, we can support institutions with that. So the various stages of framework formulation, as you can see, there are several to it. So this does take a little time, but better to get this done once up front and all the pertinent information in one place so that local requirements can be focused on in any further competition going forward. So there's the category strategy approval at national level, as Dave touched on earlier. Everything that we do is approved nationally so that we're not working in silo, and it's going to be suitable for use across the piece. The lead consortia is selected, so it may be that it could be myself or Dave or one of our other colleagues from one of the other consortia that lead on a particular framework, but that's certainly not to say they're working in isolation. We all support one another. We take part in the tender working parties and support the process through to the end. The sourcing strategy is then completed as to how we're going to go out to the market, what type of tender process we're going to use, and also how suppliers will be evaluated. So we're clear on when we come back what it is that we're going to be looking for and how people will be scored. The specification documents are then issued to the market, including the T's and C's that I touched on before, just to make sure that everybody has all the documentation up front, so they're fully aware of what we're expecting of them. The scoring and moderation process takes place our end once those bids are received back in. It's important to say that we have several people marking each section of a tender, and there is moderation that takes place thereafter to ensure that there's consistency across the board and throughout. The award recommendation will then be made based on the scoring and the award methodology that's been laid out as part of the tender process. Suppliers are onboarded, and also we do onboarding of the members by creating a buyer's guide for them. So it's kind of a crib sheet of what the framework is, who the suppliers are, what products and services are available, how they go about accessing it, and also covers some of the frequently asked questions. If any of the questions that may arise aren't covered in that, that's when they then come to us and we take that forward and clarify that for them. There's ongoing contract management, and that's important to say. It's not a let and forget scenario. We work proactively with members and suppliers to provide feedback in both directions, whether that be on how the service is running, or it can even be just on performance issues or anything of that kind. But it is constant flow of information, and we try and stay in touch with members and suppliers as much as we possibly can. and supplier engagement prior to the retender. So yes, I mean, if we're going to retender an opportunity coming around that may be existing, or indeed if it's a new one that hasn't been done before, it's important to engage the supplier community at the outset, because ultimately they are the experts in the field, of course, you guys that are on here now in your own field, and we want to make sure that the frameworks are going to work for both sides. So how can you help us? Providing the company and portfolio information to the consortia, so we can represent you guys in the best way that we can, who you are, what you do, where you've come from, that kind of thing, to get good news out there, and just to make people aware of who their supplier community is. And provide the product and service information for members as well, so that can be kind of on a more technical level, potentially for end users and such forth, so those that are going to be consuming your products, rather than the higher level that it may be for our procurement colleagues. Engaging with the marketing teams to promote the agreement and your offering. So we can support you in this. There are a number of different ways in which the messaging can get out. It can be done on an ad hoc basis. There are social media accounts that we use, LinkedIn and Twitter. There are options around paid for messaging. There's any number of different opportunities there to promote your organisation and the goods and services you provide. So it's a good opportunity. So that support is there for you. If you can provide materials such as case studies and advertorials and newsletter content, whether that be good news stories on a big project that you've worked on an institution, or something that's high profile, all the way to any good news stories around responsible procurement, social responsibility, that kind of thing. It's all important information to get out there, and it just casts your organisation in the best light that it possibly can. We issue the request, or for you to issue the requested documentation to the contracting authority, so things like accreditations and insurances. So when institutions are needing information like that, if we can store that centrally and hold it online for them, it's there accessible, and you're not getting inundated with requests for the same documentation over and over again. So that helps us to help you as well. Contact the institutions to get your pricing accepted. If on the various e-platforms that are out there, the pricing may need to be signed off. So do get in touch with them and make contact there, and make sure that you're visible to them and can be bought from. And last but by no means least, the net positives plans that are in place now, and to keep those updated. This is a piece of work that will never be finished per se, but it's good to see progress being made and constantly updated. And there is a real focus at the moment from an institutional level as to the content of those, and how proactive or otherwise you're being in that area, so that, you know, they really are quite well utilised. So it would be very good to keep those updated at all times, so the information's all there for you. And these are some of the things that we ask for the members to do to support us. So the VIPs, if you like. Engaging with the tender working parties. So ultimately, it's the members' framework. We put in place what we're instructed and to support in the best way that we possibly can. But the framework will only ever be as good as the input that we receive, in terms of wanting to understand the requirements and making sure that it's flexible but also specific enough. So we need that input from the members. Sharing information with all the interested parties, so when the framework's awarded, making sure it gets to end users and people, so those who are going to be consuming the service, to make sure they're fully aware of their options. To utilise the framework to further compete the requirements. There may be considerations for aggregation of spend or a consolidation of requirements for generic items and whatnot. And we often have the conversations around people rationalising supply bases, but the importance there being that everybody who is able to fulfil that requirement, given the opportunity to do so. And then the framework documentation should only be being shared out by the category leads, such as myself and Dave, just to make sure that you've got the most recent version of the documentation, that any of the information's there fully up to date, so you're not getting set off down a path that's potentially misleading. It could be that contacts have changed and you're not getting any response because it's a different person. So things like that, just to make sure that version control is kept as a priority. So that brings us to the close of Dave and myself's presentation. Thank you very much for attending and listening. And as Andy said earlier, if there are any questions that anybody would like to raise at this point in time, please feel free to do so. If you would rather raise them not in public forum and want to contact either of myself or Dave after this, our email addresses are there. But thank you very much for attending and for listening.